when tax cuts are disguised future tax increases. The late Milton Friedman, a free market economist and Nobel laureate, liked to say that to spend is to tax. Today's tax cuts, if they lead to deficits, are really just disguised future tax increases. The same is true of today's deficit-building spending increases. They, too, are poorly disguised future tax increases. Ultimately, what is spent by government is what is paid for by taxpayers. Those facts come to mind when looking at the Congressional Budget Office's recent outlook on borrowing. Even though the economy is perfectly healthy, the CBO projects that annual deficits will soon break the $1 trillion mark, a place they haven't been since the Great Recession, when high unemployment and a collapsed stock market caused tax revenues to plummet. The reasons for these deficits are obvious and bipartisan. Republicans cut taxes by $1.4 trillion over the next decade. Democrats and Republicans worked together to hike spending on core government programs by $300 billion in the next 2 years, and likely by more than $1 trillion over the next decade. Neither party has shown much willingness recently to address government's biggest spending problem, benefit programs such as Social Security and Medicare, whose costs rise automatically each year based on how many people retire and what healthcare providers think they should be paid. Other views: trillion-dollar deficits the new normal? Where does that leave us? By Friedman's analysis, it leaves some of the biggest tax hikes in history waiting for the next generation of taxpayers, many of whom can't even vote yet. The federal government has already deferred payment on $21.1 trillion, the current national debt, and doesn't need to speed up the rate at which it foists future taxes onto the young, who also happen to be the poorest Americans with the fewest resources. House Speaker Paul Ryan should take a special note. In announcing his decision not to run for re-election, he said he hoped to spend more time with his family. Might we suggest this includes some quality time apologizing for the crippling taxes his children will have to pay, in part because of decisions made on his watch? We also suggest that all members of Congress apologize in advance for the perfectly predictable debt crisis that is now one step closer. What happened in places like Greece and Spain is not impossible here, and if lawmakers don't start making better decisions, it is just what will beset a future Congress. Washington had plenty of time to address the gathering fiscal storm coming with the baby boom retirement. This CBO report shows things are getting worse and they will get a lot worse. The era when lawmakers of either party could claim to be fiscally responsible is over. What America has is a race to borrow from the future to reward important constituencies now. For Republicans, the group that must be indulged is wealthy heirs and the passive investors in closely held companies, including the Trump Organization. They all made off like bandits in the recent tax law while many of the middle-class tax breaks were made temporary. For Democrats, the favored are those who expect to receive far more in benefits in their retirement than they paid in over a lifetime of working. They demand pliant politicians who tell them that such indulgences won't have serious consequences. Friedman is right. Whatever is spent is ultimately a tax. The coming storm of taxes will fall on those least able to pay when they are least able to pay it. When that day comes, let's remember all those who made it inevitable. If you can't see this reader poll, please refresh your page.